What about a list that is dedicated for people who want to play easy to play champions, yet super impactful ones? And exactly this we're going to do for you. And on top of that, we are hiding skin codes within the video so you can just look at the video and then get your skin for free. But only a limited amount of people can claim the skin, so you gotta be fast. But before I get into the video, we need to talk about how the video is actually done. Every single role will be separated into different roles, as in the Baron lane will have a carry and tank tier, the jungle role will also be differentiated between carry and tanks, mid lane will have mages, assassins and the other tier, the AD carry or dragon lane position will have mages and typical AD carries, and the support tier will have protect champions, engage champions and carry champions. As for the placements, we focus on hyper easy to play champions, yet super impactful ones. So the easier a champion is to play, the higher the ranking is going to be, and if a champion is harder to play or doesn't really do anything and is too weak, it just is lower, or we don't even list a champion, because we don't think people who are struggling with piloting the champion or are looking for highly impactful champions yet easy champions should focus on these champions. Anyway, let's start with the video. For the Baron lane, we have Wukong as the easiest to play champion, yet super impactful champion. You have innate heal on your first ability, you have very good trading patterns, and people have barely any idea how to deal with you unless they know how to specifically counter your champion. On top of this, your teamfight prowess is very powerful with your ultimate ability, and it's very difficult to bully you out of lane. Champions in the S tier feature similar capabilities, or just scale heavily into the later stages of the game, and people rarely really punish you for what you're doing. For example, Vladimir has a very potent laning phase in the sense of auto-attacking using his first ability and then sustaining, Jax is scaling heavily into the late game, and Pantheon is just an absolute bully. Champions in the A tier are a little bit more difficult to pilot or less powerful. And even Camille is here in the A tier because she got really simplified, and the other champions in the A tier simply do everything the champions in the S tier do, but worse. And champions in the B tier are generally champions you should not pick, but if you really enjoy playing these champions, well, go for it. For the tank tier, we have to make a decision. Normally I'd say Garen would be the best tank for this elo bracket, or the idea of having a very simple champion, but Ornn is just still so powerful and nearly impossible to kill unless you really mess up, and therefore he still is the best tank champion. Other champions, for example Garen, Shen, Mundo and Sion, still feature high impact and are super easy to pilot. You really don't die on these champions. Champions in the A tier feel a little bit less consistent in what they're doing, but still have definite power to do something. And champions in the B tier don't really do too much, like Singed really doesn't deal damage, he's just annoying. Now we move over to the jungle role, and here we have somebody we already seen before, it's Wukong. Super easy to play, super highly influential, good team fight, okay farming, just a very powerful pick. Champions in the S tier feature same capabilities or just highly impactful other things they can do. For example, Vi has an on-click ultimate, high damage and is super easy to pilot. Morgana just has to learn one thing, which is how to double camp, and you just clear your jungle all the time and influence lanes by just pressing your second ability and stay far away from trouble. Gragas can just use his first ability on cooldown and at some point at least throw his ultimate, and then the thing is done. Pantheon just jumps into your face, one-taps you, and the job is over. Every other champion in the A tier does everything the champions in the S tier, just worse, or you need to be better at what you're doing. They're just substantially harder to pilot and less impactful, or at least it's harder to do something on them. For the tank tier, we also have Volibear here as the best champion, super easy to pilot, super good clear, super powerful. Other champions in the S tier like Amumu, Rammus, Nautilus, Shen and Jarvan are very powerful picks that deal a lot of damage, have a lot of options as to what they are able to do, and super consistent setup and things they can get done. On the other hand, champions in the A tier like Warwick, Mundo, Sion and Nunu just feel less impactful, or at least you need more of an understanding what you're supposed to do, with the exception of maybe Nunu, because you can always just roll down into the bot lane. For the mid lane, we have Annie in the mage tier. Even though she got nerfed, she's the easiest to pilot mage there is, and she's super simple to play and yet super influential. Champions in the S tier are also super easy to play, super intuitive, and have high impact or very toxic laning phases. The hardest out of all of these champions would be Vladimir. Champions in the A tier are either less consistent or take too long or are too complex to play. For example, Orianna is not the easiest to play, but if she scales, she gets very easy. Gragas is surely not the easiest to play, but just pressing his first ability is quite annoying. Other champions like Morgana are less useful in the mid lane, but Seraphine is very powerful, and every other champion is just basically not it, technically speaking. For the assassins, we have Ahri. Ari is super powerful in terms of rotations and actually does quite a lot of damage, even though people might believe she doesn't. First Strike and Boots of Mana made her into a very strong champion that actually has a footing in the meta, simply for the fact that she has such easy rotations and can catch people off guard all the time with absolute ease. Champion in the S tier, as in Diana, is a little bit harder to pilot but has super high base damage and just goes in and kills you. If you want to debate a placement though, you can also swap Kassadin with Diana if you truly want to and just exchange placements. Diana might be a little bit harder to play, depending on what you're facing, but Kassadin's laning phase is very weak and you take a lot of time until you're scaled. Diana is a little bit faster and more consistent in that regard, but if you're talking about lower elo gameplay, Kassadin might just be your go-to pick, but then again, you're just being passive early game. And with that in mind, the game might just go past you and you can't do anything. For the other tier, I'll only recommend 2 champions. Corki because he's so highly influential and easy to play, and Garen. He is such a good champion in the sense of soaking damage and still being impactful in a teamfight, but just using his first ability, his spin, ultimate and ignite. And with the power of his second ability, he just never really dies. For the AD carry tier, we'll go with Misfortune, and here's something you really have to understand and know about this champion. You don't go lethality, you don't go any weird items, you rush Gluttonous Greaves, you go for Sense Reaver, Infinity Edge, Lord Doms, and then Bloodthirster, and depending on the game you're playing, you might exchange Bloodthirster with LDR and just build it a little bit earlier. Then this champion is super easy to play, highly influential, does so much damage, just one ultimate and you just wipe the enemy, and you're just having a wonderful time. Champions in the S tier are fairly easy to play, like for example Jhin, Tristana, and Corki. Tristana is the hardest of all of these champions, but all the other champions are rather simple and feature a similar theme. You just blast everything into the enemy with spells and have a great time. Tristana, on the other hand, needs to be a little bit more clutch with a W or second ability resets and utilizing her spells properly, as she gets hands-on quite often, early game at least. In the later stages, it's super easy to pilot. On the other hand, champions in the A tier like Ashe and Jinx take a lot longer to come online and do something. However, Ashe's laning phase is completely underrated and you should have her on a radar when it comes to laning power. She really is a demon when it comes to that. For the Mage tier, we have Lux as the most influential yet easiest champion possible. You just have to touch an enemy with your first ability upon hitting level 5 and unleash every single spell into their face and they simply die. And this thing doesn't change throughout the entirety of the game unless you hit a tank like Garen, so it's super nice, and all you have to do is just press your third ability on cooldown and have an awesome time. Champions that are similar in terms of power are Seraphine and Ziggs. A champion that takes a little bit longer to scale is Morgana, but she's equally as annoying to deal with. And champions in the A tier either take too long or are too risky. For example, a Brand can be very useful into a full bruiser composition, as all he has to do is like unleash every single spell into the enemy, but if he fails doing so or the enemy has an idea what's going to happen, he will have little impact. But if the Brand knows what he's doing into full melee champions, he can completely take over a teamfight. Now let's talk about the support engaged here. Nautilus is the easiest to pilot champion and all you have to do is press ult on a target and the target is most likely going to die. Champions like Leona, Galio and Alistar feature similar features but are a little bit harder to pilot, yet still fairly easy. Champions like Gragas and Ornn are a little bit harder to pilot and I don't think often enough people will use them to their proper advantage, and therefore I just put them into the A tier. And Blitzcrank is just Blitzcrank, like come on. He has one hook and outside of this he really doesn't do anything. As for the Protect tier, since we're talking about solo queue, I believe Seraphine is one of the best Protect champions that is super easy to play. Because all you have to do is stand in the backline, unleash your spells into the enemy. If the enemy all-ins you, you just press ult and unleash all your spells right into them and they're going to die or at least take heavy damage. Other champions like Sona, Lulu, Soraka, Yuumi and Braum are also easy to play, but are not as powerful as Seraphine in direct comparison. However, if you think about people not punishing your laning phase, Sona as a champion gets really powerful. And Sona is very good into Yuumi, and if nothing happens on the lane, Sona can really be the difference. However, in a real environment with real players that play the lane as it's supposed to be played, Sona is one of the most useless champions that exists. She gets killed by everything, has no agency during the laning phase, and takes too long to get anything done. And champions in the A tier are way too skillful in the sense of what they have to do. And for the carry tier, we have Lux as the most influential and obviously easiest champion. As for the mid lane, she is just too good at what she's doing. Brand, on the other hand, for the support role, is fairly easy to play and often enough gains easy access to just dealing damage to the enemy. Don't forget, as a support brand, you're not there to farm, and therefore it's easier for you just to die because your GPM doesn't matter as much, because just unleashing your combo once will be enough for your team to then carry. Other champions like Karma and Swain are often enough too difficult to play, even though you might make the argument that your first ability on Karma is all you have to do, but that's simply not true. A well-played Karma takes way more skill than people might believe, and if you only play her with your first ability, it's basically only a third of the champion. And for Ashe, the only real power you have with this champion would be your ultimate ability, because how likely is it that you're going to play a lane to an extent that your champion shines properly? If you were able to play Ashe to her lane's advantage, you can run on people fairly easy level 1 onwards simply because of your slow, and with level 5 you can catch people on cooldown. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to boost the video and make sure more people watch it, leave a comment and maybe even become a member if you truly want to support this channel. Otherwise, don't forget about the codes in the video, catch me when I'm live streaming and ask me questions. See you next time.